and welcome back to the Jet Press Podcast. My name is Justin Fried, and I am joined, as always, by my good friend, Mike Luciano. Mike, before I ask you how you're doing, I said this before we went live that I wanted to go on a little bit of a rant before we start the show because I'm mad, Mike. I'm really mad. I'll ask you how you're doing, but how I'm doing, I'm not doing very well.
You're mad as hell and you can't take it anymore?
I'm mad as hell and I'm at my wit's end. I can't take it anymore. For those of you who tune in and watch the show weekly, not audio listeners, you probably wouldn't be able to notice, but for those who watch the show, you probably noticed that my camera quality is horrible. It's shit. It's garbage. It's trash. It's ass. It's terrible.
It's Zach Wilson is what it is.
It's worse than Zach Wilson. It's Tim Boyle, Mike. It's Tim Boyle. My upload.
Don't say things you'll regret, Justin.
My upload speeds were 0.05 earlier today. It's supposed to be in the 40s, and there's a reason for that. One word: Optimum. And I hate Optimum. I cannot stand this company. They have surpassed every expectation that I had for how shitty a company could be. And I just really quick, I want to give you a little bit of an insight into what I'm dealing with. It'll be like a minute rant, right? Indulge me for a moment because I hate this company and it makes me mad because then I have to come on here and you guys, I mean, maybe it's better you don't see my face in full, HD quality, but it pisses me off. I've had multiple service technicians come to my house for weeks, for months. I've been dealing with this issue for months. For those who started watching the show way back when we first launched it wasn't like this. It wasn't this bad. It's progressively gotten worse. And we basically boiled it down to there's an issue with the cable, the node outside, whatever. There's an issue with my entire neighborhood. It's not just me, it's everyone. And we determined this. And the service tech that was at my house like 3 weeks ago at this point submitted a referral for another team to come and fix it, right? There's an issue with their equipment. They need to come fix it. Nobody ends up contacting me. They said they would. I called them back yesterday, Mike. And guess what I'm told? I talked to a woman who works for the escalations department, whatever. They sent me to the higher ups. And she's like, well, yeah, I see there's a referral on your report. Unfortunately, this case has been closed. And they said the issue was resolved. Look at me, Mike. Look at my camera. Does it look like my issue has been resolved? No, the fuck it doesn't. My issue has not been resolved. So I hate this company. And the issue is Optimum has a monopoly in my area. So there's nothing I could do. They are the only company that offers internet in my area. They're the only company that has equipment, that has their cable lines, that has their internet lines. I can't do anything. There are third-party resellers, but they use Optimum's equipment. So I'm stuck. I'm screwed unless Optimum fixes their goddamn shit. And so
they're not going to do.
Which they're not going to do, apparently. And so
now a word from our sponsor, Optimum. Oh, no.
We will never be sponsored by Optimum. Not because they won't reach out to us. I will not allow it. We cannot spread propaganda for this bullshit company, okay? I hate them. If you ever have a choice, those living on Long Island or wherever Optimum operates, you have a choice between Optimum and any other internet provider. Choose another internet provider because this one is awful. Anyway, I'm glad I got that out of my system. Mike, how are you doing, buddy? What's going on?
Well, I'm feeling better health-wise than I was on Sunday's stream, so that's good. Let's get into football really quick before we do that, though. Surprisingly, there's football to talk about. You can find us on Apple, Google, Spotify, Overcast, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. And YouTube. There's 2 ways you can support the show. You can subscribe for free, and then hit that like button for free. And then you can pay 99 cents to get priority replies in the comments. Those are the 2 ways. If you want to help us make more great content, that's how you do it. Let's just get right into it because Justin's going to blow a gasket talking about Optimum. I may have had COVID over the weekend, and I somehow in a less surly mood than Justin. And Justin's got a bone to pick with a lot of Jets Twitter, a lot of Jets media, a lot of people around the Jets sphere because he's seen some takes that have just got him mad as hell. Relating to both the Jets this year, the Jets going forward, the Jets and way in the future, who they should hire. It's really pissing Justin off, starting with Aaron Rodgers, because for some reason, I know the numbers look good and people are right in saying there aren't that many good, above average quarterbacks out there. I get that. But there's been a lot more of the we should bring Rodgers back for next year movement popping up in the last couple of weeks than I thought I would have seen, especially because they won 1 game since October, and it is December 11th. And I don't know where it's coming from because you're not seeing improved play from anybody, and yet now somehow the oh, the Jets are fine, just run it back with Aaron Rodgers contingent is getting even louder. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I think where it originates from, I don't want this to turn into a me being mad show, but I think it might be. I think where it originates from is we have seen better play out of Aaron Rodgers. I mean, this past week was maybe his best game of the year, at least maybe his best game since that Patriots game on Thursday night where, somebody might have declared that same old Jets was dead. Maybe it's his best since that game. He's played a little bit better. And more importantly, I think he's moving around better. He looks a little bit more mobile. And I think part of it is copium, where it's like, oh, well, a lot of the year he was playing hurt. He was playing through multiple injuries. I believe it was Jay Glazer that just reported this past Sunday that Aaron Rodgers is dealing with a grade 2 hamstring strain, which was basically described as a tear, a high ankle sprain, and an MCL sprain. So he's dealing with injuries. He's playing hurt. And so that contributes to some of his bad play. And also, you look at the regular box score numbers, they don't look that bad, Mike. They're pretty good, especially given the caliber of quarterback play that the Jets have received in recent years. They're not bad. Unfortunately, they don't tell the full story. Rodgers ranks 21st in EPA per play. He ranks 33rd out of 35 qualifiers in completion percentage over expected. The only two quarterbacks with a worse completion percentage over expected are Anthony Richardson and Cooper Rush, and neither of them have started the full year. I don't think Aaron Rodgers has been quite as good as his box score numbers indicate. Sure, you could point to the injuries being part of it, but isn't that something that the Jets have to consider anyway if you're talking about running it back with him next year? He has now had 3 injury-riddled seasons in a row, going back to his last year in Green Bay. He'll be 42 by the end of next season. That's really something to consider. And again, there's multiple reasons why it doesn't make a ton of sense to run it back with Aaron Rodgers. In my opinion, I don't think it's the most egregious take that we're going to talk about in this list. But I do think it doesn't make a lot of sense. You can go from the financial perspective, from a hiring perspective, where you're trying to bring in a new GM and head coach, and now you're saying, hey, you're stuck with Aaron Rodgers. I think there's a lot more reasons why it doesn't make sense than it does make sense.
Leon's got a bunch of comments here that I want to tee up for Justin because he's going against the grain here, I think. Rodgers can take a pay cut. What are his other options? More importantly, what are the Jets' other veteran options? Well, he already took a pay cut when he got here once, so he had to take another one. And yeah, what are the Jets' other veteran options? Maybe they don't need a veteran option. Maybe they need a younger guy. That seems to be the prevailing sentiment of what they should do.
From a financial perspective, I don't think he's going to take a pay cut. And in terms of what are his other options, we don't know if he wants to play next year. He has hinted that he does, but it's Aaron Rodgers. We don't know. If he does want to play next year, the Jets make the most sense for him. I just don't think the Jets want him back. So I don't know if he's going to have a choice there. As for other teams, we've speculated in the past, the Titans, the Vikings would be objectively hilarious. I don't know. I don't think he has a ton of other options, but I don't know if he's going to have a choice regarding the Jets. And as far as finances are concerned, his dead money balloons to $63 million in 2026 if he plays in 2025, whereas it's just $49 million if he's cut this offseason. Now, the Jets are going to have to pay up regardless. Moving on from him is not going to be cheap. They could designate him as a post-June 1st casualty and then split that money out between 2025 and the future. But they might just want to take their medicine this year, especially if they're bringing in a new regime. They're not expecting to compete necessarily for a championship in 2025. It makes the most sense to just kind of cut bait and move on instead of kicking the can further down the road and then taking on more dead money next year if you run it back with him. I don't think financially that makes a ton of sense. Again, on top of the fact that you are limiting yourself with your hiring options because, we're going to talk about it a little bit later. Say you want a guy like Ben Johnson. Say you want a Mike Vrabel, one of the top options, right? It's a lot harder to convince them to come to Florham Park if you're saying, okay, Aaron Rodgers is going to be your quarterback. Now, I don't foresee a scenario, even if they were to stick with Rodgers, that they give Aaron Rodgers nearly as much input as he's had in the past. I don't think they're going to go into the offseason, even if they plan to stick with Rodgers, and say, all right, Aaron, you get to pick our head coach. You get to have a lot of say in who we hire. I don't think they're going to do that. But you're forcing it on your next head coach and GM as opposed to letting them make the decision, which it limits your options.
Rodgers is on pace to potentially set the season passing yardage record for the Jets. They've only had one 4,000-yard passer in Namath. Was we've established before, the numbers, just the raw box score numbers, don't really tell the story. Rodgers' struggles are not why the team is 3-10. It's the defense. He's a big part of why they're 3-10.
Yeah.
And then, Leon, if the new head coach or GM wants Rodgers to be the bridge, it will happen. Jets will take a young guy, just not Warner Sanders. Like, yeah, if they want, but who would want that?
Right. I don't know
You
what
would want that.
what you're
If somebody did, then yeah, he's staying. But I don't see who that's an appealing option for. Like, yeah, in year one, you're probably going to get high 20s level of quarterback play. You're going to get 25 touchdowns, maybe 10 interceptions,
if you're
and
lucky.
then you work from there. And that's good quarterback play. But think about all the other stuff.
Yeah. And the injuries, again, are a genuine concern. He's been hurt now 3 years in a row. He tore his Achilles. He came back, has had 3 different injuries. Yeah, he's playing through it, but he's not played well when he's been very banged up. And if it was any other player in a different circumstances, maybe he would have sat out, because a lot of Aaron Rodgers' motivation to play this year was to prove to himself, to prove to his teammates, whoever, that he could play through the entire year, that he could play 17 games and play the entire season. If that wasn't necessarily his goal, maybe he does sit out a few weeks. I don't know. And maybe he should have, given how he was playing when he was really banged up. I mean, he's still banged up now, but he's at least looking a little bit more mobile. Like you said, Mike, I just don't think any GM that you're hiring and any head coach that you're hiring is going to look at the Aaron Rodgers situation and say, yeah, we should bring him back, especially with the finances of it. I don't think it's their best option. If they're going to go the veteran bridge route and then maybe draft a guy, why not just run it back with Tyrod? If you're not going to do that, bring in a guy like a Jacoby Brissett. Bring in someone who's a lot cheaper, who's going to save you a lot of money, and probably give you similar production. Yes, Aaron Rodgers might be on pace to have one of the statistical best seasons by a quarterback in Jets history, but we all know the history of Jets quarterbacks. It's really bad. It's been years since they've even had a quarterback start every game of the year, which is why the passing numbers are down. Like, it's in the modern NFL. I mean, since the NFL has kind of exploded as a passing league within the last, I mean, maybe it's slowed down a little bit this year, but in the last, 10 years or so, have the Jets even had a quarterback start every game of the year? Maybe Mark Sanchez did it in early 2010. I think McCown did it. And yeah, you want to talk about that Josh McCown season is one of the legitimately the top 7 quarterback seasons in Jets history.
No, he didn't. My bad, he didn't.
But and that season,
13 games.
That's right, because he broke it.
Bryce Petty did the other 3.
He broke his ribs or something. But yeah, that season is still one of the best seasons by a Jets quarterback in history. So the bar is in hell. The bar is below hell. It's my internet. That's how bad the bar is right now. So I wouldn't use that necessarily as a barometer.
Marcelo Cabrera. Rodgers takes a pay cut with Fields 1 year behind him to play in 2026. Why wouldn't you just play Fields the year after that?
Right. Why would he?
Why not just move off? Like, why do this dog and pony show? And then maybe Fields will be good a year from now.
Why would Rodgers?
Why not find out now if Fields is even good or not?
I don't see why Rodgers is going to take a pay cut. I don't see why he's going to do that. The money's coming to him anyway. He's going to get the money when he's released or retires or whatever. I don't see why he's taking a pay cut. And then from the Jets' perspective there, you have Tyrod under contract next year. You will eat dead money by releasing him. And I assume if you're bringing in Fields, you're going to release Tyrod. Tyrod's not going to be your third string. So now you're paying Tyrod to release him. You're sticking with Rodgers, which is going to cost a lot of money. And you're bringing in Fields, who's not going to be cheap. I mean, he's not going to be $40 million a year, but he's going to get fringe starter money. He's probably going to get, what did Jameis Winston sign with Cleveland? Probably
Darnold got $10 million from the Vikings.
Darnold, it's probably gonna be about that. It's probably gonna be about that Darnold deal. That's what I would imagine. That's a lot of money to devote to the quarterback room in a year that you're not going to compete. And what for? What? And you also have Jordan Travis kicking around.
I wouldn't be opposed to Fields. I just
Correct.
Rodgers and Fields together.
Correct.
Wouldn't make sense. Another take that has really baffled me specifically. I feel like watching this is apparently everybody. I know that people get wrapped up in a couple good games. Like, people somehow think Bryce Young is like not terrible now, even though he is, because he's had like 3 marginally average games.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I don't get it, like how people think. Meanwhile, like other quarterbacks who were drafted that high put up the exact same stat line and they're losers. Like, I don't get it. And Young lost all those games. One thing that's really baffled me is, well, the Jets can trade Breece Hall now. You got Braylon Hall and Isaiah Davis. I think we're at the point. We did like a Rookie of the Year kind of thing in our Jets award show, and we gave it to Braylon Allen just because Malachi Corley literally hasn't done anything. The only thing he's done is fumble the ball at the goal line on one of his 5 touches or whatever he has. And Fashanu had barely played because of Tyron Smith. I think now that he's played at left tackle and looked as good as he's looked, it's probably Fashanu who's looked better than Allen. 100%. Braylon Allen has not had like a big explosive breakaway run since like week 2 or 3. I mean, this honestly, the stretch he's in now is why he fell to the 4th round, where he looks kind of slow and plodding. And I know there's a lot of like 3rd and 1, he gets 2 yards in there, messing up the yards per carry average. I get that, but he just doesn't have the same juice he did earlier in the year, which again, he's 20 years old. He's getting hit by 30-year-old. Like maybe, physically he's not what he was in week 1, and that's fine. He's also 20 years old. He's learned how to be a pro. The Isaiah Davis thing too, like, oh, we got Isaiah Davis. He literally didn't get any snaps before this. I thought he was going to be cut before, at the beginning of next year. It looked like it. Now you can get rid of Breece Hall for that. Are we forgetting what Breece Hall is? Like, running back is, people always try to say running backs are replaceable. They're not. Like, if you look at Saquon and Derrick Henry and Josh, they're not replaceable. But like average running back play is like, it's easier to find average running backs.
Sure.
You're even below average running backs than there's any other position in the league. So because of that, people think you can just trade out high-end guys for like 2 or 3 lesser players that if they all stand on their head can equal Breece Hall. That's just not the case.
It's exceptionally easy to replace a player like DeAndre Swift. It is not exceptionally easy to replace a player like Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry or Jahmyr Gibbs or whoever you want to throw in that conversation. And
Josh Jacobs is like 3rd in the league in rushing too.
And I would throw Breece Hall still in that conversation. I think Breece Hall's stock has fallen a little bit going since the start of the year, where we were talking about him as maybe the 2nd best running back in the NFL. But I also think before his most recent injury, he was playing some of his best football that he's played. And a lot of that is because the offensive line was finally doing their job. But Mike, how many times have we seen mid-round running backs, middling running backs who are just, get a game or two to shine and they play well? I mean, in recent Jets history, Michael Carter, we were talking about Michael Carter as a guy who could potentially be a running back of the future. 2 years later, he's not even in football anymore. He's on the Cardinals practice squad, I believe. Remember Elijah McGuire, Mike? Remember Elijah McGuire, where he had a couple of good games and it was like, oh my goodness, Elijah McGuire, he might be a piece. We don't know that Braylon Allen or Isaiah Davis are going to be long-term NFL players. They look like they belong right now. They've had some good games, and I'd like to keep them around as complementary pieces. We have seen Breece Hall play at an elite level. He was 4th in the NFL in scrimmage yards last year on good efficiency. The only guys with more scrimmage yards than Breece Hall in 2023 were Christian McCaffrey, CeeDee Lamb, and I think it was Tyreek Hill was the only other. Those are the only 3 players that had more scrimmage yards than Breece Hall in 2023. You can't tell me that Braylon Allen is replicating that. You can't tell me that Isaiah Davis is replicating that. It's nonsensical. It's the same fans that were turning.
Dolphins have a bad front 7 too. That's a good game for them to show off anyway.
It's the same fans that were saying to trade Sauce Gardner a few weeks ago, because when your team is bad, everyone is the enemy. Everyone's is the devil, apparently. So Breece Hall, he's had fumbling issues this year. He's had a disappointing season by his standards and by everyone's standards. I think everyone would agree with that. He'd be the first to tell you that. He is the first to say that. He said it multiple times this year that he needs to be better. The fumbles are a concern. I don't know how much of that was the knee injury in the past game, because he did fumble twice, but he was playing through an injury that he probably shouldn't have been playing through. Possibly that contributed to it. I don't know. But he's still an excellent player. And one of the focal points of the Jets offense, anyone suggesting to trade him to rely on guys like Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen. Isaiah Davis is what, 15 career carries? What are we doing? What
he
are
was
we
in
doing?
South Dakota State last year.
Right. What are we doing here?
The old statement is, everybody's favorite quarterback is the backup quarterback. That's now extended to everybody's favorite running back is the backup running back. Yep. And I think, I want to get to a comment from Marcelo too. I don't think the Jets will have 3 contracts between Sauce, Wilson, and Breece. Well, the 2, they're definite. Sauce, that's a definite.
For sure.
It's just a matter of how much is he going to reset the market by. They're extending Sauce. Whether he likes it or not, he's getting that extension. Garrett Wilson, we'll get into later, they're probably going to extend him, and they're probably not going to reset the market with him. I don't think he's going to get like a CeeDee Lamb contract. I think he's going to get a good deal, probably like $30 million a year, maybe a little over that, but not, 36, 37, that level of the high-end market. And then Breece, like, the running back market is bouncing back now, I think, because of Saquon and Henry and Jacobs, where they're showing that it overcorrected to paying them nothing. Now they're going to start getting a little bit more. But you're still not going to be paying a ton for Breece. Might be in the $13 million a year. That's not debilitating. Jermaine Johnson, I have questions about now, because defensive end, you can replace that in the draft. Injury was never like an elite pass rusher just to get into the quarterback even when he was healthy. That's the one I think they're going to let go. Brees, I think it's more likely than not. I'd say maybe 60%, maybe 2/3 he does, 1/3 he doesn't get that extension. But the other two are certainly going to get extended. So why not Brees?
The good thing is the Jets have time, especially with a player like Brees Hall. I mean, I know you never want to bank on franchise tags because it doesn't always sit well with players, and it's not the best way to handle these negotiations. As we've seen in the past, the Jets have waited too long to give contract extensions in recent years. But you have time with Brees Hall. I mean, he's under contract next year already, and then after that, you could franchise tag him. With Garrett Wilson, they also have even more time because they have the 5th-year option with him. Same with Sauce Gardner, although I expect that gets cleaned up earlier. We'll talk more about the Wilson situation in a bit because we're going to talk about some trade rumors, I guess, regarding Garrett Wilson, which we'll get into. But bottom line, Brees Hall is a fantastic player. There's no reason to trade him. Whether you ultimately pay him or not might come down to what he does the next year because you're not going to give him. I don't think you're giving him an extension this offseason. So you still have another year to evaluate that. And then you could say, all right, are we going to extend him midseason? Are we going to extend him after the year? Are we going to franchise tag him and then extend him? That's a conversation, I think, for next offseason. But for now, anybody suggesting to trade him is bonkers, completely out of their minds.
Leon, new GM will have no loyalty to these inherited players, but that doesn't mean they're going to get rid of every single player.
That goes for players like Jeremy Ruckert and Michael Clemens, who the coaching staff continues to play even though they're bad at football. Brees Hall's a really good football player, and any GM inheriting him is going to want to pay him and play him.
And then Brian Sternbeck, there's a real chance the team like the Vikings or Commanders would be willing to trade a 2nd-round pick for Hall. There's a point where it does make sense to restock.
I don't think we've reached that point. I don't think we've reached that point right now, especially because, again, you look at the offense last year, and even for a lot of this year, the offense revolves around Brees Hall. Maybe you can replace him with a 2nd-round pick. Maybe, but you probably – the odds are you probably won't. Not every running back that's drafted in the 2nd round is going to be a Brees Hall. That's just not the case. And I don't think Braylon Allen or Isaiah Davis have shown me anything that makes me think they can be a top 5 running back in the NFL. Brees Hall, I do believe, can be a top 5 running back in the NFL. He was last year. Wouldn't say he has been this year, but I have every reason to believe that with a better coaching staff and a better situation, hopefully he can rebound to that in 2024. And if he doesn't, then maybe you make a decision on his future. But I think it's not smart to sell one of your best young assets right now when you're still a pretty good team and have a good roster and realistically can retool and compete in 2 years. I don't think it makes a ton of sense.
Marcelo Cabrera. At this point, I just want Kinlaw and Clemens out.
Yeah.
4 more games, man.
They're both gone after the year. Kinlaw's a free agent. Clemens is going to be under contract, but I see no reason to believe that he should be on the roster in 2025. Same goes for Jeremy Ruckert, who will be here. You got to upgrade in those spots. Michael Clemens should not be playing 60% of snaps this year. Absolutely no reason why. Mike, on that note, you want to jump to or did you have another comment?
Well, I just want to get one last quick 5-second take. Do you think Leon says, do you think Brant Boyer is going to survive another coaching change? I don't think so.
I don't.
Because his unit's been bad this year.
I think we're done with the Brant Boyer tenure, which is it's great. I mean, it's been an awesome tenure. He's survived since the Bowles era is when
Bowles brought him in.
So he went through Bowles, Gase, Saleh, and now Ulbrich technically, which is pretty crazy. So he's done a great job throughout that time. Unfortunately, we've reached a point where the special teams has taken a bit of a step back. And also, I think one of the underrated issues is that they really struggled to find kickers under Brant Boyer's tenure, which I don't know how much you want to
look for a special teams coach. I'm not going to lie.
Right. I don't know how much you want to put that on Boyer, how much you want to put it on the front office or whatever, but I think he needs to take some blame for that. And yeah, I think they have a clean slate in the offseason with their coaching staff. You want to jump to the next?
He's also from Utah, so he might be a Zach Wilson truther. I don't know.
Got to get rid of all those. Got to get all the Zach Wilson truthers out of the organization.
Well, let's move on to the next one, Justin.
Let's do.
What you got for us?
We got Hassan Reddick, and I want to talk about this. This isn't necessarily a Jets fan hot take. This is a Jeff Ulbrich hot take because Jeff Ulbrich was asked today when speaking to the media about Hassan Reddick and how he's performed since. I don't want to say coming back to the Jets, since debuting for the Jets in the middle of the season. And he basically said that Hassan Reddick has been everything that the Jets thought they were getting. How great he was as a pass rusher and how impactful he was. And one of the excuses that he gave for why he doesn't have all this production was because it's hard to get pressures and sacks when you're losing in games. The Jets have had leads in multiple recent games. They've led in the fourth quarter in all their last 3 games, I believe. That can't be used as an excuse. Hassan Reddick has 16 pressures in 6 games. 8 of them came in the Texans game. He has 5 pressures over his last 4 games. He has just 1 QB hit since joining the Jets. Over his last 4 games, he has a 6% pressure rate. If this is what the Jets thought they were getting in Hassan Reddick, I have questions about Jeff Ulbrich. I have questions about the front office. I have questions about a lot of things, which I already do have questions about those things. But I just wanted to debunk that and say, no, Hassan Reddick has not been what the Jets hoped they were getting. And no, his lack of production is not because they have not been winning games. He has 88 pass rush snaps over the last 4 games, 5 pressures. That's really bad.
The thing, though, about coach speak, I normally don't like coach speak, but a lot of guys, maybe this comes with time. As Brian Sturmack says, that comment from Ulbrich should be permanently disqualifying from ever becoming a head coach again.
It's pretty bad.
I mean, he's done that with his performance, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The thing, though, is when you're established a lot, like you do it well enough where you guys are like, okay, like you get information out there and you're honest, but like, and even if you stretch the truth a little bit and you don't give the media anything, people are like, okay, fine, I know what I'm expecting. Ulbrich is not even doing that. Ulbrich, I don't want to call it like lying because it's not lying, but it's
kind of lying.
It upsets me because it's just insulting. Because we're supposed to buy that. We're supposed to accept that a guy who I can't remember outside of Antonio Brown has a career has anybody self-destructed their own career like this?
I mean,
Antonio Brown wasn't even for money. That was because he's a whack job. Like I
could think of a few. No,
I mean in terms of like not in terms of behavior, in terms of
okay.
In terms of like handling their contracts and handling their trade requests and things like that. I can't remember anybody.
It's really bad.
I mean, the sitting out is one thing. The not showing up's another thing. The coming back and being terrible, which we knew would happen because he's not in football shape when he came back. That's another thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is where I feel bad for Robert Saleh too, because he was like, oh, I get to coach Hassan Reddick. This is probably the best pass rusher I've had here in 4 years. And then he never got to coach him. Like that's where I feel bad because they got a guy who, not to be like cliche, like, only cares about the money. I don't know what he cares about. Because if he cared about the money, he would have shown up at least because he cost himself money. Now here's how bad he's been, Justin. He's actually been a pretty good run defender this year. Like 25th among edge rushers in run defense.
He has 7 run stops in 6 games. That's way better than I thought it'd be.
Do you know where he ranks in pass rush grade among defensive ends? Don't look it up.
I actually don't have it in front of me. Out of how many?
There's 201 graded thing. Don't look it up.
I'm going to guess 140-ish.
Very close, 152nd.
Look at me. Look at that. That's pretty good.
152nd. This was a guy who 2 years ago had 16 sacks and was an all-pro. And last year, while playing in Matt Patricia's defense, 11 sacks, playing inside linebacker sometimes, and a Pro Bowl. And now he can't do anything right. This reminds me of, I'm afraid it's going to remind me of when Andre Rison went to the Browns. Because Andre Rison, amazing receiver with the Falcons, like 5 Pro Bowl. He had a lot of personal problems too. His girlfriend set his house on fire. That's a problem.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, like Lisa Left Eye was his girlfriend. She burned his house down.
Oh, I know what that is. Okay.
Yeah, she burned his house down. Then he goes to the Browns, is terrible, left the Browns and went to like the Packers and won a Super Bowl and was pretty good everywhere else. It's classic Jets where you get a guy who's great, comes here, does not even as bad, does nothing, and then is probably going to leave and be better. I don't know if he'll ever be a Pro Bowler again. And he has nobody to blame for that but himself. The Jets are a defense guys like him thrive in, and he ruined it for nothing because he got no financial benefit out of this. But he's probably going to be better than he was with the Jets.
Oh, for sure.
He'll probably get 6-7 sacks next year with whoever he signs with. And that's what's going to piss me off.
Probably because he'll have an actual training camp. He'll have an actual training camp to prepare, which is in this situation, sure, he's training
Who's
on his
gonna
own.
pay
He's
this
not.
guy?
Somebody will. I mean, not a lot of money, not nearly as much as he would have gotten if he showed up and had a great year with the Jets. But
If the Jets would have extended him, they were thinking about that.
Possibly. They could have. They might have. But yeah, I think a lot of his struggles or, inability to make an impact can be attributed to the fact that he didn't have a training camp, but he showed up in the middle of the season. And I don't know if he was out of shape.
Who wasn't even the coach when he got traded there.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I don't know if he was out of shape or what, but he's clearly not playing at the caliber that you hope he could be. And Brian points this out. This is, again, a great point. Just Jeff Ulbrich, you say he's not lying, Mike. He is lying. He's straight up lying. Tua Tagovailoa dropped back 48 times to throw this past week. Against Seattle, Geno Smith dropped back 32 times. Opponents are throwing the ball a lot. Hassan Reddick has plenty of pass rush opportunities. Again, 88 pass rush snaps over the last 4 games is a lot. That's 22 a game for a guy in this rotation. They don't play their defensive ends a ton. Or no one defensive end is getting a ton of snaps. That's a good amount. He has, what did I say, 5 pressures over that time? 5 pressures over the last 4 games.
5 pressures.
Wild.
I guess what I was saying with Ulbrich is, I guess a lie is meant to deceive. This is just like everybody's seeing that a guy is terrible, and he just goes, "No, it's not." Like he's like a little kid.
There's a difference between
you spilled your juice and say, "No, I didn't." Like that's what it sounds like.
Here's the thing. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. But like, there's a difference between coach speak and lying. Like he can get up there and say, Hassan's been working his ass off. He's been trying, which is probably not true, but he's been working.
Yeah, because if he was,
he's been trying he's been trying out there, and we like what we've seen from him. You could say that while not saying, oh yeah, the reason that his production hasn't been great is because we haven't been playing with a lot of leads. That's a lie. Like that's straight up a lie. You could say the other stuff, which is like, we can't verify if that's true. Like that's an opinion. If you want to say he's trying out there and he's doing his best and we like what we've seen from him and we're excited to see more, that's coach speak. That's what coach speak is. Coach speak is not lying and saying, hey, he's not getting enough sacks, or he's not getting a lot of sacks and pressures because he's not getting enough opportunities. No, that's not true.
Everything he expected.
As Leon says, I hate air being wasted on Reddick. I agree. Let's move on, Mike.
Let's move on to Garrett Wilson.
Let's talk about Garrett Wilson, a player
who deserves air to be used on him. That came out wrong. Okay. Garrett Wilson has been the subject of, I don't even know if I should call these trade rumors, more trade speculation.
Yeah, I'd say speculation is a good word.
Where a lot of people seem to think if shit keeps hitting the fan, because it already has hit the fan so many times, it's probably knocked the fan over with how many times it's hit it.
Nice.
That Wilson's just going to put his hands up and go, I've had enough of this, and ask out. And it's a move that obviously I wouldn't like it selfishly as a Jets fan, because Garrett Wilson's really good. He seems to care about the right things like winning, and I think that because Adams made him the number 2 again, and he doesn't really get a ton of touchdowns because of his quarterback play and a bunch of other things, I don't think he gets the league-wide respect that he deserves. But purely objectively taking the Jets fandom out of it, like, how could you fault the guy for that? He's going to get paid no matter where he goes. Jets will pay him. The Titans would pay, and everybody would pay him. So part of me is just like, it would sting that essentially that would kind of close the door on this era, because he had this great draft class, him being the one of the jewels of it, and he asks out because you can't get your stuff together. But it's hard for me to find fault in that, because how many years does Garrett Wilson have left in the NFL? 8, 9? Like, how many more 6-11 seasons can you endure? How much more like Jets, constant losing in the media, and Rich Samini and this whole thing, like this whole sphere of the Jets that we've all come to know. How much more of that can you enjoy if you have other options like he will? How much more of that can you take?
It's tough. Losing takes its toll on players, man. And you've sseen it with Garrett Wilson. I mean, he comes obviously from...
That's almost like we mentioned it before, not to like jump off really quick. That's why I'm not like always pro-10, because you see these guys after games, guys that are going to be here, Quinnen, Sauce, Garrett, and then they talk like that, and they're that depressed. We have a loser gene. I can't believe that just hiring a new offensive coordinator who's 39 years old and has been in the NFL for 4 years, they're not going to fix all that so it doesn't happen, and they're not going to get some of that scar tissue out of there. That's the problem.
You're not wrong. No, that's a totally valid point. And there's, look, we don't have to get into the pro tank, anti tank debate now. There's positives and negatives to losing and positive and negatives to winning, but that is a valid point. And it's clear that the losing has gotten to Garrett Wilson. You just mentioned the quote where he said it's like you have a gene or some shit, talking about losing and talking about the cycle of losing that he's had to endure with the New York Jets.
High school he won, college he went to Ohio State, great program. He always won.
Exactly. He has come from successful programs, and he enters the NFL, and he's hit by a bus like this. He's blindsided by this because look, the Jets were not supposed to be this bad. I know you could look at the history of the Jets organization, like maybe when he was first drafted there, it was bad. Like once they got Aaron Rodgers, that was supposed to fix it. And not only did it not fix it, it somehow got worse. And I can't imagine the toll that takes on the psyche of a player like Garrett Wilson, who's going out there every single game, playing his ass off. Garrett Wilson is the type of person, the type of individual, the type of human, the character that you want on your football team. That is somebody you build around. Despite how miserable things have gotten for the Jets this year, and there's been fingers pointing and players have given up, you never see that from Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's a rare type of human in the NFL, especially at the wide receiver position where, I mean, look, a lot of times you want to have a cocky asshole. You want to have an alpha type who is confident that he is going to dominate the player in front of him every single time, every single snap, right? Sometimes that personality works, right? Garrett Wilson, I feel like, is a rare breed for the wide receiver position. He is someone you want to keep around. Unfortunately, he's not happy. And the source of a lot of these rumors as of late, I know there was some talk about teams calling about Garrett Wilson around the deadline, and the Jets said they had no interest. There's a recent article from Zach Rosenblatt at The Athletic, and put however much credence you want into this, but I'll read the exact excerpt where he said, last season, the Jets had one of the worst offenses in the NFL, and according to multiple team sources, Wilson expressed privately that if things didn't get better, he wouldn't want to stick around long term. Internally and externally, many have wondered when, not if, Wilson will request a trade. That doesn't sound good. I don't like how that sounds. I don't like reading when, not if, Garrett Wilson will request a trade. Now, obviously, that's not from Garrett Wilson. That is speculation inside the organization and outside the organization, that people are looking at the situation and saying, all right, it's a matter of time until Garrett Wilson requests a trade. That's not saying that he necessarily will, but it is saying that Garrett Wilson told people last year, hey, if things don't get better, I don't know if I want to resign here. I don't know if I want to sign a contract here. And if that's the case, he's probably going to request a trade. Things got worse. Things didn't just not get better. They got significantly worse. And so it's concerning for sure. For one, it's concerning.
Well, the concerning part too, though, is to add on to that, like a lot of, unless you're like AJ Brown, who somehow is 11-2, putting up the same yards per game stats he had last year, and he's pissed. I don't know what's going on there.
That's wide receivers, man. That's the Elijah Moore, AJ Brown effect right there.
Stephon Diggs too. Like
I love Stephon Diggs. I understand why people hate Stephon Diggs sometimes, but man, I don't know. That's that. If I have a star wide receiver, I want him to be like Stephon Diggs. Sometimes,
yeah, but he just asked out of his third team. So
sometimes I want him to be like that. Sometimes I want him to be like Garrett Wilson, but when he's on the field, I want him to be like Stephon Diggs. Like, just be a cocky asshole.
But then you can't switch it off. The problem, though, is receivers typically request trades when they're on bad offensive teams, and they don't get the numbers they have, or they don't make improvements, on the offense. They got Aaron Rodgers to improve upon Zach Wilson, so that's trying to keep him happy. Garrett Wilson is leading the league in catches right now, so he's not like production-wise, he's having a great year. Like it's not like when Randy Moss was on the Raiders and he was getting 40 catches in his prime, and he's like, I need like somebody to throw me the ball. Let me go to New England. This isn't that. He's in a situation where even though the record might not bear it out, he's getting his numbers.
Sure.
So because of that, the scary part for me is even if they're next year, even if they're not good, they could put together a situation where he gets his numbers, the quarterback plays okay, and they win more games than they did this year. That may not be enough to get him to the playoffs, and that might not be enough to make him happy. That's the scary part, is you could put a system in place where he leads the league in catches again, and he still says, I'd rather want to win, I'll ask out. Because you can't fix that in a year. The Jets are going to win a playoff game next year. So because of that, if that's his stipulation, it seems like it's going to be harder for them to keep him, isn't it?
Look, I don't know Garrett Wilson. I don't know what his exact motivations are, but I think you're right in one aspect that he wants to win. I don't think he particularly cares too much about his numbers. He's never,
he does want his numbers, but
of course, but he's never spoken like someone who is more concerned about his numbers than winning. Which
he's never said like "throw me the damn ball." He's never said that.
And if he has, it's been because, hey, I want to win, and I know I'm open, or I know I'm going to make a play here. Give me the ball, and I'm going to help us win. Again, I don't know the guy, but I'm saying from what we've heard from him in press conferences and the vibes he gives off, he does not come across as somebody who cares about his personal numbers more than winning. So he wants to win. What I can hope is that as long as you see signs of progress and you're winning more games and it's clear the organization is moving in the right direction, ideally that would be enough for him. I don't think the Jets, I don't know. Again, I don't know, but I don't think the Jets need to win 12 games next year to keep Garrett Wilson happy. I don't think they need to win the AFC East to keep him around. And I'll get to a couple of comments here from Leon. First, a quote from Aaron Rodgers, who is currently speaking, I believe, to the media. On the Jets culture, Aaron Rodgers said, quote, "It might be some sort of curse we have to break." So Aaron Rodgers is now acknowledging.
He's now fully into the something's up here.
He's acknowledging the curse. It took him.
But like when stuff like this year happens, how can you not think that?
I agree. I've admitted
they're living it.
This Jet season, and we got to like break it down at one point in the future. This Jet season feels like it was specifically designed like by the football gods to screw with Jets fans. From the Aaron Rodgers shit to guys like Mekhi Becton and Braden Mann having career years in Philly to Sam Darnold.
Rodgers looking bad, but not like all the way bad. So there's still like debate over whose fault it is. And
Sam Darnold and Geno Smith first place in their divisions. Zach Wilson somehow having a better record with the Jets than Aaron Rodgers. I mean, you could not make this up. You legitimately could not make this up. Somehow this has happened. But I want to get to a couple of comments here from Leon. Talks about ways maybe keep Garrett Wilson happy, and this makes a lot of sense. Leon said, "I like Fields with Garrett Wilson to keep him happy." Sure. That's an upside. That's an upside to getting Justin Fields. They played together at Ohio State. Makes a ton of sense. He also adds Mike Vrabel with the Ohio State ties would have an added appreciation for Garrett Wilson. Once again, upside to hiring Mike Vrabel. I don't think that's a reason that they should make those moves. Like they shouldn't do that just for that reason. But 100%, that is an upside. If you go and get Justin Fields, if you go and hire Mike Vrabel, boom, those are Ohio State connections. Hopefully that can smooth things a little bit over with someone like Garrett Wilson, because as Leon said, I want Garrett to be a forever Jet. And I agree. If there was one player, honestly, if I could pick one player in this current Jets roster to be a forever Jet, I think I'm taking Garrett Wilson. I think I'm taking him over Sauce Gardner. Not saying that Garrett Wilson's better than Sauce Gardner. If there's somebody emotionally that I want to be a forever Jets player, who I want to represent this organization, and hopefully at the highest level when they're finally good, if they're ever finally good, I want it to be Garrett Wilson. And so hopefully they find a way to make that happen.
I just don't know if they, because years like this makes you wonder, the NFL's right. How could something not be like put against the Jets on purpose? Because every decision they've made has gone wrong. There's no way every decision could be wrong.
But it has.
Moving on to head coach talk.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of it. The big hot name that everybody wants is Ben Johnson. Offensive coach, young, winning organization, the Lions, which is incredibly weird to say right now.
It's true, though.
There you go. I guess one guy can turn it around. Where's our Dan Campbell? And his offense averaging 33 points a game with a great quarter. Jared Goff's playing the best football of his career, despite not being particularly mobile. They don't have an amazing – Jamison Williams is their number 2 receiver. That's not amazing. He's built one of the best running back tandems in NFL history.
And they're averaging
33 points a game.
Yep. And the offensive line is balling.
And the offensive line is the best in the league. So everybody wants Ben Johnson. I got to give him credit, is not just going to go rush into the first job who wants him. He is going to sit back and say, I know everybody wants me. He's basically going to say, I'm going to let you interview me of why should I hire you, which could come back to bite him, because I remember hearing this story and I thought, if this guy is not Sean Shanahan III combined, if he's not that, then this guy just looks like a prick doing stuff like this. But he basically put out what do they call it? Like the old-timey religious things, like not a testament, but like a word from the church, an official statement.
a dictation.
fatwa. I don't know for this.
A falafel? What did you just say?
Okay, that's racist. A fatwa.
Wait, how is that? Wait, what?
It's basically in Islam. It means like a statement made by a.
Oh,
imam.
I didn't even know that's okay, buddy. That I didn't even know that was all right. Moving
Yeah, all right. So
I know what you said.
A fatwa. He puts out a statement.
Oh, I didn't hear you say. Okay, I didn't know that word.
Yeah, so the FATWA.
Decree. That's what I was thinking. I said dictation. I was thinking
decree. Yeah, okay.
That's the word I was trying to think of.
Yeah.
Apparently you as well.
So, yeah. But anyway, he puts out a decree basically saying, if you want to hire me, I need complete organizational stability. I need a very defined org chart. I don't need, this guy's dad popping in here and I like this guy 5 years ago, he gets his say. I don't need any of that. And this was weird, a willingness to correct past mistakes. I thought that was a weird addendum that he had in there.
It feels
but
almost
he had it in there.
Specific to like one team or something. Like I feel like that's a specific shot at one team.
Yeah. And when you see things like this, it makes you think Woody Johnson, who again, people have been saying, oh, Woody's going to Europe. He has not been named for any official position yet.
Mm-hmm.
He's not the ambassador to the UK. They named somebody else for that. So it's looking more like the other one I heard was he was going to be the ambassador to Italy. And they just named, this is because the incoming administration's, this is his inner circle. He hired the Rockets owner, Tillman Fertitta, the UFC guy. He's the ambassador to Italy now.
What's his name?
Tillman Fertitta.
I don't know. That is Tillman?
Tillman, yes.
Is he Italian? He's got an Italian last name.
Fertitta, yeah, but
there you go.
He's like a Texas guy, but of Sicilian descent. Okay, there you
go. Speaking of Italians, Tommy DeVito's starting this week. We might get Tim Boyle.
Oh, no.
Big week for Italians, Mike.
Oh, I hate Tommy DeVito so much. I think I've said it before, they're faking it. They're faking the Italian meatballs, honestly, chicken cutlets. Not that they're faking it, but they're overdoing it for the cameras because,
Are we sure Tommy DeVito's not an industry plant?
I think he's an industry plant.
He might be an industry plant. Yeah, Italians are winning this week, Mike. Big week.
Just like I think that I didn't know who Sabrina Carpenter was until like a month ago. I think she's an industry plant.
Oh, buddy. No, we can't be doing that.
I really didn't. And then she out of nowhere, she's like on stage with Taylor Swift. I'm like, I don't know who that is. There's no way you get that popular that quick.
She was on Girl Meets World. She's been around forever. Sabrina
Girl Meets World. I don't know what that is either.
You know Boy Meets World?
Isn't that was a show, right?
Yeah, and then they made a spin-off of it. It was Girl Meets World like years later, and it was Sabrina Carpenter was in that. I believe Sabrina Carpenter was in that. You
could have made that up, and I would have believed you.
She was a kid actor. No, okay. we can't be calling Sabrina Carpenter an industry plant.
I know is her mom or aunt is Lisa from The Simpsons, so I think that Bart. Her mom is Bart. So
Nancy Cartwright, right?
Yeah. So
I didn't know that.
Well, but anyway,
she probably has connections.
Getting back to Ben Johnson,
so she probably has connections. Anyway, go on.
When you hear quotes like this, a lot of people joke like, "Oh, they're taking the Jets out of the running here because the Jets are famously." I honestly, and this is not to call Ben Johnson's character out, I think this is just posturing because he said you got to come and put on your prettiest dress and smile for me and do a show. That's what he's trying to get these guys to do.
Oh my God.
He's trying to don't think of Woody Johnson in that outfit.
I pictured Woody Johnson in a dress.
You did that, not me. So
you put that image in my head.
So that's what he's trying to get all these teams to do. I don't think the Jets are going to be necessarily out of it if they want him specifically, because at the end of the day, he could say all that and this and that, money's going to play a factor and just the roster is going to play a factor. There's 32 of these jobs. People make a big deal out of the Jets being dysfunctional, and no one is doubting that. Every single team has some level of, I would call it, dysfunction, where the owner wants this, the GM wants this, the coach wants that. Sometimes it's very collaborative and open, like teams like Baltimore and Philly. They all seem to get along pretty well between there. But there's probably some strife. At the end of the day, Ben Johnson, if he likes what the Jets are building, if he likes the ability to pick his own quarterback, if he likes wanting to be the guy who could break this self-described Aaron Rodgers curse that is on this team, I think that's going to be secondary. I think that's going to overrule it at least, and he could still be considered as a Jets coach.
Speaking of that curse, as Brian mentioned, I feel like we mentioned this earlier, but as Aaron Rodgers said, quote, it might be some sort of curse we have to break when talking about the Jets culture. It was from Brian Costello. So maybe Ben Johnson is the guy to break that curse. No, but
He's a voodoo shaman.
Maybe. But yeah, as far as the criteria goes, the first one was organizational alignment, which was like between head coach and GM. The Jets meet that, or at least in theory, they should meet that. So when I see that first criteria, I'm not immediately like, oh, the Jets are not a possibility for this, because they're in a position where they're hiring a new head coach and a GM. If they want to get Ben Johnson, maybe they go and hire Ray Agnew from Detroit and they bring in him as your GM, and now you have him and you have Ben Johnson. That's organizational alignment. I think if you're hiring Ben Johnson, it makes sense to have him aligned with whatever GM you're bringing in. So I think that would meet the criteria. But the second one, which was recognition from the organization on what went wrong previously and their willingness to fix it.
Doesn't everybody want that? Like,
everyone in theory wants that. That doesn't scream Woody Johnson to me, for sure. Ultimately, I don't think, for a couple things here, I don't think Ben Johnson is going to be high atop the Jets list of potential options, and I think the feeling will be vice versa. I don't think the Jets are going to go after a guy like Ben Johnson. I think they're more likely to go after a quote unquote culture building leader type guy. You know, Rich Cimini, I believe, just reported today on his podcast or whatever that came out yesterday that Aaron Glenn is very interested, was the exact word that he used.
I've heard that like going back weeks that Aaron Glenn's high in their list.
Glenn is very interested in the Jets head coach job. I think it's a lot more likely they go to a guy like Aaron Glenn or Mike Vrabel or a Brian Flores or whoever.
All defensive guys,
all defensive guys, because they want a CEO type, which is funny. If you remember the discourse around 2021, Mike, that was the exact same verbiage that they used about Robert Saleh. Not to say,
I will say though, Aaron Glenn would be, I guess, because he played there too. Like,
it'd be very fun.
He does seem like a guy who would have a very high like give a shit meter.
Yes, my pitch for Aaron Glenn was the Jets needed a culture shift back in 1997. That was the last time they were desperately this bad in need of a culture shift. You could say when they hired Rex, but you were still feeling the ramifications a little bit of the Bill Parcells era when he kind of transformed the entire organization in the post-Rich Kotite era. They brought in Parcells, completely turned the organization around from a cultural standpoint in 1 year. Literally 1 year it took them. The Jets need a very similar cultural reset right now. And who knows Bill Parcells more than somebody who played for Bill Parcells, played years for Bill Parcells, and that's Aaron Glenn. And I think Aaron Glenn has kept some of that mindset and has incorporated some of that coaching style into his current coaching style. And then he's also been part of another organizational overhaul from a cultural standpoint in Detroit under Dan Campbell and under Brad Holmes. So he's seen basically two perpetually dysfunctional organizations, two of the biggest losers from an organizational standpoint in NFL history, in the Jets and the Lions. And he's seen both of those organizations turned around by good coaching. And he's been a part of both of those cultural overhauls. That would be my selling point for Aaron Glenn and why I think he might make sense for the Jets head coach job this year. I'm not saying he would be the guy that turns it around, but he's seen it done before. He's been a part of it in two separate organizations. That's why I would sell Aaron Glenn. But as far as Ben Johnson is concerned, I don't think the Jets are going to be high atop his list because of the criteria that he has listed. And I think he's probably going to have more appealing offers than the New York Jets. And I also just don't think the Jets are going to make him a top priority, and Woody might not be willing to pay what Ben Johnson might be asking for. So I don't think the marriage between those two makes a lot of sense. But as far as the other coordinator in Detroit goes, that makes a lot of sense to me.
The one thing I'll push back on is when you said they'll target a culture-changing kind of guy over a guy like Ben Johnson, who's this schematic whiz kid. When the Rams hired Sean McVay, did they call that a culture changer?
No. And you could
he got the 2 and he won one.
And you
Was
could
Kyle
get
Shanahan really called a culture changer when the 49ers got him?
Correct. Look, the easiest.
If you win, that's your culture. If they help you win, that's set your culture. You could be a good leader all you want.
I'm talking more about perception, but you're right. You can absolutely do both. And ultimately, the best way to change a culture is to win football games. That is the way you change a culture. If Dan Campbell went to Detroit and they won 4 games his first 3 years, culture didn't change. He's gone. He's done. He's fired. That's it. The best way to change a culture is by winning. But I think from a perception standpoint is where I'm coming from with this. Whereas Ben Johnson isn't necessarily seen as a CEO culture changer, loudmouth kind of guy, whatever. Somebody who's going to be a no-nonsense dude who's going to overhaul the culture. I don't think
that's
Ben
a
Johnson
problem too. Then of being not a loudmouth, because that sounds like a
loudmouth's
negative.
the wrong word. That's a Rex. I'm not talking like a Rex Ryan type, because I wouldn't say Aaron Glenn is a loudmouth by any means.
But yeah, but I guess the point though is, like, if you're using that, like being vocal, like if that's one of your criterias, because Saleh, it was weird because he was on game day, but I guess he wasn't a particularly vocal leader. And I get why you want to go in the other direction.
Yeah.
He's a vocal celebrator, not a vocal leader.
I think the Jets were a little misled on that, because I think they brought him in thinking he was going to be more, like he was going to be able to command the locker room more than he did. And maybe part of that wasn't his fault. Part of it was you're forced to play Zach Wilson. He's awful. You lose the locker room as a result. Like, I think there were parts of that where he lost the locker room with the offense. But even till the very end, dude, he did not.
He had to. What else could he do?
Right. But even till the very end, he never lost that defensive locker room to the very end. They still respected it and
because they were good. So of course they believed in him.
Of course. But yeah,
I guess the problem I'm having with is the fact that you're looking for being a vocal leader like that, even if it's not necessarily a proven leadership style. If you're looking for that as a prerequisite, that could be a problem. And I know Jets fans, look, we love you Jets fans, but I know that some of them are like, why can't they go bench Sauce Gardner and yell at him when he misses a tackle?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not how anything works.
No.
I feel like they want that. Like, I feel like they think Rex did that. Rex didn't really do that.
Rex was the ultimate players coach, dude.
Rex was a players coach. He was a big, happy, funny guy. He wasn't like, he was not Bill Parcells. Bill Parcells is like being in the Army. He was not like that.
They were completely opposite coaches.
And you know what? I get trying to like use the Parcells thing to bring him back, but you know when Bill Parcells last was go with the Jets? Over 25 years ago.
Well, yeah.
You consider that may not work right now, because he went to Dallas afterwards and he looked like the league sort of passed him by. So maybe don't just try to keep finding the next Parcells. Maybe adapt with the league.
I think with the Glenn selling point, it's more so that he is, again, as I've said before, he has been a part of two completely different cultural overhauls, one of which recently happened. It's not just the Bill Parcells things. It's that, hey, he was there the last time that the Jets had to completely reset their culture, and he was a part of that, and it worked. And then he was there for the time the Detroit Lions, who, I mean, we talk a lot about the Jets' dysfunction and misery. The Lions might have had a beat. Before this most recent run, they might have had a beat, because they never won a Super Bowl. At least the Jets had a Super Bowl. The Lions never even made a Super Bowl. So they were as incompetent and as dysfunctional of any organizations you get. And he was a part of a huge cultural reset there. So he's seen it done. He's seen it been done. I think that's more the selling point. And I'm also not necessarily speaking from my perspective when I say the Jets are going to, the Jets should hire this, right? I think that's what Woody Johnson is prioritizing. I think Woody Johnson is not looking for the next offensive genius. I think he was doing that when he hired when Christopher Johnson really hired Adam Gase. I think that was.
Woody's never doing that again.
Maybe not.
So Woody could go on a decades-long streak of not hiring an offensive coach.
They basically have. Their last two have been Adam Gase and Rich Kotite. That's their last two offensive head coaches were Adam
Parcells, then it was Al Groves, a defensive coach.
Yeah, Rich Kotite and
Herm Edwards was a cornerbacks coach. Eric Mangini was the Patriots DC.
Rex Ryan,
Todd Bowles.
Yes, it's literally Adam Gase and Rich Kotite are the last two offensive-minded head coaches the Jets have had. So yeah,
shouldn't that tell you something, Woody?
Maybe, but I'm saying again, I don't think he's going to look at Ben Johnson and be like, "Oh, we need the next offensive whiz kid." I don't think that's where his mind is at. I think he's like, "We need a leader. We need somebody who's going to change the culture." And he thought that person was Robert Saleh, and also Christopher was a part of that as well.
The winner changes the culture, Woody. If the offensive whiz kid win, McVay won, Shanahan won, they changed the culture. Matt LaFleur changed the culture and changed it, I guess, but like kept it moving. Like
I'll ask you, Mike, because I think this is actually a really interesting question. If you could pick between Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, which would you have as the Jets head coach?
Ben Johnson.
Ooh,
but not like overwhelming, but yes, Ben. Like if I've made like a list of candidates they should hire, they're both in like the top 5.
I agree.
So, but then again, Saleh was like, people forget Saleh, people thought was like going to go to the Lions because he's from there. And then when the Jets got him, it was viewed as like a massive, whoa, they stole him from the Lions.
Yeah, it was a
the Lions got left with Dan Campbell. So who knows?
I think I agree. Mostly because, as I've said in the past,
the upside when you hit on an offensive-minded head coach is a lot higher than the upside when you hit a defensive-minded coach, because it's a lot harder to find a good offensive coordinator than it is to find a good defensive coordinator. And when you have a guy like Ben Johnson as your head coach, you don't have to worry. If the offense is working and the scheme works, you don't have to worry about him getting poached by another team. We're going to see that with the Lions. They're going to have to find a replacement for Ben Johnson. Maybe they can. Maybe Dan Campbell develops his own tree and they're able to do that. I'm not confident that they can. We're going to see that when Bobby Slowick leaves the Texans, they're going to have to find another ops coordinator there. When
He might get fired if they at this rate.
I think he's still going to get head coach consideration. His stock's falling.
That'd be an offensive coach I would not want.
His stock has fallen a little bit, but I think he's still going to get consideration because
I think he's been like close to bad this year, but that's separate conversation.
But regardless, when Cliff Kingsbury, if Cliff Kingsbury gets hired, they're going to have to find another OC there that's going to run that offense. And I don't know if Dan Quinn's going to be able to do that. I don't know if they're going to be able to find
He's in my top 5 too.
I would love Cliff Kingsbury because, again, if you hit on an offensive-minded head coach, the ceiling is so much higher. And so I would lean Ben Johnson for that reason. But I'm with you in that, saying that I think both of them, honestly, if I said a top 3 right now, it'd probably be them 2 and Vrabel would be my top 3 out of realistic candidates.
Yeah, it's close.
We'll power
I would prefer Kingsbury. I think Brian Flores, if they want to go defensive too, just because I feel like he can poach someone from Kevin O'Connell and just like let them do the offense, and then he can handle everything else. Because everything else, I thought he was okay in Miami. He just couldn't get the quarterback and the offense right, and he was kind of like a neurotic guy. Now I think he realized that's not the right approach, and I think he might be better the next time around.
This is a good question. It's hard to do this on the spot. I know, Mike. Brian asked, how would you construct a staff for Ben Johnson as best you can? Well, first, I imagine he'd bring over a lot of guys from Detroit. So I quickly just looked up.
He's pretty much only been with Detroit, so a lot of his connections are probably going to be from there.
Correct. He was with the Dolphins before Detroit, so they would also potentially be maybe good news for Sean Jefferson. Maybe Sean Jefferson sticks around as a wide receivers coach. What's fun about, I'm looking at their offensive staff. They have a ton of former players. You know, their quarterbacks coach, I didn't know this. Is Mark Brunell.
Mark Brunell and Antoine Randall is the receivers coach.
Jets legend. And their assistant QB coach is JT Barrett.
From Ohio State.
And their defensive coach.
And the Saints, when he would get cut like every week and re-signed every week.
Their defensive staff also has some former players. Obviously, Aaron Glenn runs it. Some recent former players. Remember Kelvin Shepard?
Was he a DB or
he was a linebacker. He's
linebacker, for the Bills, right?
Yeah, yes. And then Sean Dion Hamilton, who most remember probably from Alabama.
I remember him coming out in the draft. He just had brittle bone disease. He would get hurt every game.
Some of these guys would make a lot of sense. Obviously, I doubt he wouldn't be able to bring over an Aaron Glenn with him. But as far as like offensive staff goes, Brunell as a quarterbacks coach makes sense. I mean, there's been talk of, I would love it. I don't think he has any connections to Josh McCown, but maybe Josh McCown as offensive coordinator. He loves the Jets. He still has ties to the organization.
I would love that.
I think that makes a ton of sense. I don't think he's going to get head coach offers this offseason. I know he had that one with the Texans not that long ago, but that was kind of out of nowhere. I don't think he's going to get serious head coach consideration yet, but McCown has ties to the organization. I don't think he has any ties to Ben Johnson that I know of, but that makes sense to me. And then looking at the current staff and who he has, Brunell would make sense. He has ties as well to the Jets organization. I'd have to look back and see who he crossed paths with in Miami. So he was at Miami from 2012 to 2018. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head that immediately comes to mind, but that would be a good thing to look at.
Joe Philbin. He's going to bring him back.
Joe Philbin. What is he doing?
I think he's the Cowboys offensive line coach.
He's the Raiders offensive line coach.
Raiders.
Okay. He was with the Cowboys though.
Okay, by 1 year, I was close. So, all right.
He was with the Lions.
He's the blandest man who ever lived with the most average record.
Brian says Thomas Brown and Aubrey Pleasant. So that's 2 Rams guys, right? Thomas Brown came from the Rams as well.
Rams, and he went to Carolina, then he went to
now he's in Carolina, no, but then he came from the Rams, and then Pleasant, I believe, is with the Rams too. That makes sense. Pleasant's, he was in Detroit. Okay, I forgot he was in Detroit. He was a DB coach and passing game coordinator there too. Sure, those names make sense. He crossed paths with Ben Johnson. That's a good shout. Again, it's tough to do on the spot. I honestly have to look up some of the guys and see who he crossed paths with because there's so much coaching turnover in the NFL. It's hard to keep track of when everyone was everywhere.
Oh God, I just realized if he hires Joe Philbin, Aaron Rodgers loved Joe Philbin. He won a Super Bowl with Joe Philbin.
Stop. That's right in Green Bay. Stop.
Or
No.
he could be like the Titans and he could hire his friend from high school who was like really underqualified, but he's his friend from high school.
Who? What?
Go look at the Titans OC's resume. He went to high school with Brian Callahan. I think Callahan was the quarterback. He was a receiver. And literally, that is the only reason he's the OC of the Titans.
I feel like I pride myself in knowing a lot of I did
Nick
not know.
Holtz is his name.
I've never heard of this person.
There's a reason.
Look
at that resume.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. He was an offensive coordinator at UNLV 2 years ago for 1 year.
Literally because his best friend is the coach. That is the reason. So who knows? Maybe that could happen.
You know who I'm going to throw out there? Who they gotta hire as their OC, which is it's impossible because it'd be a lateral move and he's not going to leave. Give me Dan Pitcher. Give me SUNY Cortland legend Dan Pitcher, who is currently as the OC of the.
If the Bengals fire Zach Taylor, bring all those guys over here.
That would be hype. Zach Taylor. If they fire Zach Taylor, you think he gets a head coach job immediately? I don't know. I don't know if he would, but I don't think he would take an OC job.
He could sell a Super Bowl, and he could sell, hey, Joe Burrow, I helped.
If somehow Burrow gets fired, bring me Dan Pitcher because I need some SUNY Cortland representation on this team, especially because SUNY Cortland, unfortunately, they're the defending D3 national champs, but they did lose in the playoffs. Big upset to Springfield. That hurt me. But their quarterback, Zach Boyce, is entering the draft this year. And I know he's D3. There's a chance he gets drafted.
Better than what not Marist College. As of today, it's Marist University. That's what their team is doing. So, yeah.
Look at you guys moving up. That's the home of what was the guy? Terrence Fede. The Dolphins.
Him and Rick Smits are our two most famous athletes.
Boom. We have Mick Foley and Kevin James.
I've met him, by the way. He looks like an alien.
Who? Terrence Fede?
Rick Smits. He's 7'4".
He's a big dude.
His neck looks like a boogie board. It's just this huge thing. You're like, whoa.
Looking up a reference for what he looks like. Jesus Christ. Oh, he reminds me of Arvydas Sabonis. That was the first name that popped in my mind.
Well, because he's Dutch, so European looking.
European white guy who's really tall. Fair enough.
He's a big giant guy.
Yeah. Anyway, all right.
Now that we're talking about Rick Smits, I think it's time to call time on this episode of the Jet Press Podcast. Thank you for tuning in, despite Justin's internet problems and me just getting over some sort of sickness. I don't know what it was.
It was COVID. It was probably COVID.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But I'd like to think I'm doing a little better today. I say as I feel a cough coming. So, Justin, before I start hacking up a lung, anything to sign off here on the Jet Press Podcast with?
Yeah, I hate Optimum. They're the worst company that I've ever had to deal with in my life. And if you missed my rant in the beginning, go back and watch it because it was, I don't know, maybe don't watch it. I don't know. But I hate Optimum. If you have any choice between Optimum and any other internet service provider, choose the other one because Optimum is the worst company in the world. And I will stand on that. And hopefully, me complaining about this fixes my internet in the future. We'll see. But until next time, until this Sunday, thank you all for joining us on the show today. You can follow Mike on Twitter at @ByMikeLuciano. Follow me on Twitter, Justin T. Fried. Follow the Jet Press at the Jet Press. Download the Jet Press podcast wherever you get podcasts. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe, hit that notification bell. Also, you can become a member today. It is only 99 cents. It is an amazing way to help support the show and also get your chats, your comments prioritized in the chat. So we appreciate everybody who tunes in, everybody who became a member, and all that great stuff. We stream live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time and live immediately following every single Jets game. So we'll be live this Sunday. Also, if you haven't checked it out, we have an interview up on the Jet Press. I will continue to promote it with Demario Davis, who's one of my personal favorite Jets players of all time and one of my, honestly, dream interviews. I was very excited I got to interview him. He's an awesome dude. Definitely recommend checking that out. And until Sunday, thank you for listening to the Jet Press Podcast. I've been Justin Fried. That has been Mike Luciano. See you guys next time.
See you guys on Sunday.